Okay, let's talk about sentience today. That's a subject that I've been contemplating lately quite a bit. Sentience is easier to explain what it is than why it is or how it is. What we're talking about is how our self-perception works, how our self-awareness works. And if you look at me right now, you're perceiving me through your eyes and hearing me through your ears, and I'm perceiving the world. It's coming into my through my fingers and my senses, and there's a self that is presented by this presented to by these perceptions, and that is my sentient reality. It's what some people call the Cartesian theater, or the ghost inside the machine. Now, they like to think that like your brain is like a machine, and sentience is the way that your brain works, or how your brain works. But I think it's more complicated than being a machine. That's the point of this video that I'm doing. Um, the one thing you have to question, of course, whether or not your senses are reliable is one of the questions that you want to go into, because different people have different senses, believe it or not. Like colorblind people are seeing green and red sometimes as the same color, so that your senses can be misleading. And then, of course, I know there's crazy people who hear voices, and there's, hallucinogenic drugs that make you see things that aren't really there. So senses can be really very misleading sometimes. But inside the middle of where your senses present themselves is still you, is still me here. Well, I gotta say still me, because according to Rene Descartes, the only thing you know for certain is your own existence. But I will say that I'm going to go with things are more obvious than they seem, meaning that there probably are, and I say there's 99.99% chance that other people do exist and there are other sentient beings. It would be a kind of a very lonely existence if that weren't the case. So let's just say that everybody, all the human beings, have a kind of similar sentient reality. What kind of people they are may be a little bit different, but they all have that sentient reality, that presentation that they see the world through. And the questions that people like to raise is, where does it begin and end? Are dogs sentient? Do they have a self-awareness? Is it what is their sentience? My thinking is that unlike some people, I see there's two elements that, at least, to sentience. The one element is the mechanical part of it, the brain capacity, the brain cells and the synapses, and they say there's like 10 billion synapses in your brain, and there's a matrix that is very large and complex, and there's a processing unit that is more complicated than almost any computer in the world. And some people believe that that's all there is to sentience, that the brain has a certain level of complications, and like a crystal, when you get to a certain ingredients and a certain conditions, then sentience configures itself like a matrix, And I believe that that's only 50%. Maybe there's even more that I don't understand, but there is at least another element to sentience, and that is life itself. Life which carries desire and will. Because even the most simple creatures, then, I believe, have some level of sentience, because there are many people, I viewed these videos online and so forth, talking about the artificial intelligence and how it may arise soon and so forth. How, if you put together these computers that eventually will have the same amount of processing as a human brain, and they have these programs that write themselves, that self-correct themselves, that eventually it's only a matter of time before a sentient machine exists. And they've done a lot of science fiction on this already. The Arthur C. Clarke with his 2001 Space Odyssey, he had that HAL, which is supposed to be like the IBM computer out in outer space, develops sentience. And of course there's Data on Star Trek. He's an android creation that develops sentience. And there's iRobot talks about it with Isaac Asimov. And there's Wall-E, the cartoon robot. They all develop a sentient reality. And the thing is, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, but it may be that computers and machines will never be sentient because they do not have desire. They do not have will. Will may be, and desire may be, part and parcel with the organic reality of life. That might be one of the biggest ingredients of what makes life life, is that it does have desire. Desire for existence, desire for perpetuation, desire, hunger and thirst and lust. Those are desires that come with life, and almost all living creatures. I know pre-sexual ones do, the cellular breaking apart, and that's how they procreate. But most life does have a certain amount of desire. The trees reach toward the sun. They all seem to want to perpetuate themselves with and that's part of being alive. Now, I know that people are afraid. If you watch that Terminator movie and so forth, of machines becoming self-aware and sentient because machines can be very powerful. But no matter what, even the most complicated computer in the world so far is nothing more than a fancy screwdriver or a hammer. If you just sit it down, it's just going to sit there. It needs somebody that has a desire and the will to pick up the screwdriver and use it for something. And that's half of what sentience is, I believe, is that life force, the desire for perpetuation. And the people don't see. I've watched these people on some of these videos and read some books about this, about artificial intelligence, and they believe that, well, it's just a matter of programming eventually, that they will program desire. Well, I see this in the way is something of the way that people view God and people. With God, some people believe that all desire and all life comes from God. But somewhere along the line, in the Adam and Eve story and so forth, it becomes they bite into the apple of the knowledge of good and evil and so forth, and they develop self-awareness. They develop free will. We could talk a long time about free will, but I don't think that's exactly how it works. I think that sentience comes from life. I think that the complication of sentience comes from the mechanical side, yes. In other words, there may be some levels of sentience. Sentient reality might be something that it's like math in a way. We did not invent pi. Pi exists. Whether, that's why if one person finds pi and how it works with the circumference of a circle in relation to the radius of a circle and so forth, say, that's interesting. But that wasn't really created by people. That's just how the physical world works. And the same thing may be true with sentience in a way. There may be, I believe, that there's complexities of sentience that exist as you climb the ladder. So that if there's a gnat A gnat is a sentient being. It has its place in the universe and its understanding of the universe, but it's only at a low level. The more complex sentience may be out there to grasp, but we need to have a larger mechanical capacity to do so. But in other words, the force that drives sentience is the life force, but that's not all of sentience. Sentience is a perception of reality, as that's what sentience is. So the larger, even though the force comes from the life force, the perception of sentience is wider and wider as our brains become larger and larger, as we have more and more capacity for data storage and processing. So there is a mechanical element to sentience, but it's only 50% of the equation. It's only half. No, see, this is where people disagree with me a lot. Some people believe that there's no element involving life, no element involving will and desire. And I believe that that is the force that pushes the sentience outward into it's the thing. It's 50% of the equation. So that's what I think. It has to be something that so in conclusion, then, I believe that dogs do have sentience, and I believe that human beings have probably the largest perception of sentience in the world. But there's only a difference in quantity, not quality, of what we believe and what we think in the sentient world. So, thank you. I appreciate your time.